Salutations and blessings, one and all, and welcome to the Honey Badger Social Club. The music we heard for the Honey Badger Social Club introduction is music that I recorded in Austin, Texas in 1999, and therefore I own exclusive rights to it. My original idea for this broadcast was to use Peter and the Wolf by Prokofiev. I assumed it was still in the public domain, but lo and behold, it is no longer in the public domain, as much of our historical culture has been removed from free use by greedy bastards. Today's guest is Robert Barnes, and this is what he had to say about the public domain back in 2011. Lawrence Golan, a Denver professor and plaintiff, and his colleagues are asking the justices to overturn a decision by Congress giving copyright protection to millions of works by foreign artists that once were in the public domain. Films by Alfred Hitchcock, paintings by Picasso, and the symphonies of the great 20th century Russian composers are among the works that are no longer available to be freely quoted, copied, played, shared, or republished without paying royalties or seeking permission. In the Golan case, that means he can no longer afford that music that used to be a part of the basic curriculum, part of the basic repertoire. Congress said that applying the copyright to such works was necessary to comply with treaties and foreign trade agreements, and that the show of cooperation will mean copyright protection for the work of American artists overseas. Ladies and gentlemen, this stuff is so old, it's part of the culture of Western civilization. It's our historical culture. This is ridiculous. Peter and the Wolf is one of the greatest, if not the greatest, pieces to introduce kids to music. That's what Golan says, and I agree. It's the first piece of classical music that I ever heard. And he goes on to say, we all saw it when we were kids. We would take field trips, and we knew that the oboe played the duck, and the flute played the bird, and the horn played the wolf. Orchestras used to be able to buy the Prokofiev symphony for $100. And that was it. They could use it for as long as they wanted. Now they have to pay $100 for each use, $100 or more. So it's really cost prohibitive. What entity can afford that type of royalties? And very curious where these royalties are going. Our guest today is high-profile constitutional attorney, a giant slayer, and a legal crusader, Robert Barnes. Barnes has been scoring points for liberty and justice for decades. Tonight we'll be chewing the legal fat on the Rittenhouse situation in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Robert, give us the constitutional nuts and bolts regarding guns, 17-year-olds, and state lines.
People who don't know, I went to law school in Wisconsin, so I'm licensed in Wisconsin. I know a lot about Wisconsin. I practiced there for many years. I still have a practice active there now. And so the law is designed so that Wisconsin's a very pro-Second Amendment state in terms of its populace. That's why its self-defense defense is very robust. But for gun possession purposes, if you're under the age of 18, you're not allowed to have a dangerous weapon with certain exceptions. One of those is if it's under certain supervision of target practice, under supervision when you're hunting. But if it's a rifle, then if you're 16 or 17, you are allowed to have it in certain cases. And effectively, it's whether it's federally lawful for you to have it. So apparently, according to the information that's available to us currently, the weapon was somebody else's. It wasn't his. So he didn't own it. He simply physically possessed it that night. And based on the analysis that Will Chamberlain gave, and he's a lawyer and the publisher of the publication Human Events, he believes based on the Wisconsin law is the same as my conclusion, which is that it was legal for him to have it. Unless there's some fact we don't know. So and also, in my view, is to the extent that the law could be interpreted in such a way as to preclude him from having it, then I believe that the law would violate the Second Amendment of the United States Constitution, particularly in these contexts. Because for all the criticism of him for being young and being out on the streets in a difficult situation, our Constitution was written for kids like him to be out defending people when they're under attack. That's what the militia is all about. And back then it was for 12 and 13, 14-year-olds. Very young people fought in the Revolutionary War, including some of my forefathers. When I explained my theories of political and legal strategy, I said, it goes back to my great-granddaddy, Colonel Prescott, who said, don't shoot until you see the whites of their eyes. He's a direct lineal descendant.
Your toward bias for the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of We the People is evident. And for that, sir, the Badgers salute you. Now, tell us about this prosecutor. It appears that he's about as sharp as a bowling ball.
It doesn't surprise me. The prosecutor in Kenosha is a political prosecutor. You couldn't find somebody dimmer if you had an unlit light bulb. So I mean, there's not a lot going on up there. He brought a bogus prosecution, in my view, against a woman who defended herself against her sex trafficker. So he brings a lot of cases that don't make a lot of sense to me. And this indictment was rushed, and that part of the indictment, I believe, also was just used as an excuse to stick something on there they thought they could get him with. But I believe, unless facts are different than what we know currently, he is not guilty of that crime.
Robert, was this a criminal complaint, or was this a grand jury indictment?
Criminal complaint. It did not go through the grand jury process.
Robert, it appears to me that Rittenhouse was there to defend his community from its enemies, and he was there to clean up vandalism and wreckage BLM had caused the previous night. And in defense of his community, he found himself the target of an angry, violent mob, and so naturally he defended himself while under attack. What I see here is a clear-cut case of self-defense, Robert. What say you?
But Wisconsin has a very, very, very robust self-defense law that only got broader after the Zimmerman case and legislative changes that happened in Wisconsin in 2014. So not only does the Castle Doctrine apply, it is broader than that. Now, of course, for people, the Castle Doctrine stems from our Revolutionary era, where where the British were coming to go into a guy's house, and he said, "This is my house, this is my castle over my dead body." I think they did end up killing the guy, but that's where thank God, the Brits. But that's what led in part to the idea of the Castle Doctrine built into American legal arcana, if you will. But it only applies if you're in front of your own home or things of this nature. The Castle Doctrine wouldn't be particularly applicable here. Wisconsin has the same self-defense law, whether it's at your house or someone else. The Castle Doctrines, the things that benefit you in the Castle Doctrine, which is the right, you don't have to retreat, you don't have to use the least possible force, just reasonable force, so on and so forth. That applies to self-defense across the board in Wisconsin. Wisconsin has one of the broadest, I know Nate and some other people were making, so there's been some commentary about whether or not the sort of a provocation, or whether this was like Ahmaud Arbery and arrest, etc. They don't understand just how broad self-defense law is in Wisconsin.
Rittenhouse in Kenosha could be the shots heard around the world. And the decision and ruling finding Rittenhouse acted in self-defense could be the gavel heard around the world. Thanks for joining us today, and be sure to like this video and subscribe to the Honey Badger Social Club here on YouTube. You can help us upgrade our equipment and to provide better live streams and a call-in show in the future. You can do that by contributing to Venmo or Cash App. The link's in the description box below. Let us know what topics you'd like to hear about in the comments, and we'll see you guys next time.